Welcome to Stress Less Obsessed, the podcast. My name is Sophie Deans, and I'm here to bring you all things on self-care, self-development, as well as lifestyle tips and hacks to keep your life as simple and stress-free as possible. So let's make a start and join me on a journey of living a life with less stress. Welcome back, stress lessers. I hope you're stressing less by now anyway. And if not, keep listening and we'll see what we can do. Now, on to today's episode. I'm talking about something we spend a huge chunk of our time and of our life doing. In fact, did you know that the average person spends 1/3 of their lives at work? Not that exciting, but that is the equivalent of 90,000 hours. And that is a hell of a lot of time, especially if you're not enjoying what you're doing. So today I thought I'd go through some things that you might want to consider or reflect on and basically see whether your job is part of you living a happy, stress-less life, or is it in fact making you unhappy or more stressed than you actually need or want to be. And I do want to start off by saying a few points just before we get into the episode. And I want to note that everyone is different and different people enjoy different things and different people are able to have different levels that they can tolerate of stress. And so there really is no one ideal that will suit everyone. Okay, there's no one size fits all job. It's all about finding something that works for you. And that's why I'm doing an episode on it, because otherwise I'd be able to just tell you that, the job with the least stress is this. I also think that there isn't very often a job where you won't even feel like a little bit of a drag, a little bit of resistance at times. And where you experience things as part of even your dream job, where you might on the odd day think, I don't really want to do that, or this is something I don't really want to do, or I'm actually feeling a little bit stressed. Okay, so I think it's important to note that stress is unavoidable. Yeah, I wanted to burst your bubble early, that you will not find a job without any pitfalls whatsoever, but we want to help to find something that actually resonates with you and makes you lead a happier and more purposeful life. I would love to hear from anyone, though, who thinks they have their dream job, and hear from you if you do have any challenges in that job. Also, if you think there are no challenges, no stresses in that job, also let me know, because I would love to share that with the other listeners in the future. Ultimately, though, this episode is going to contain lots of different things to help you find your ideal, happier role, job, purpose. But it is ultimately an individual thing, okay? I also wanted to make another very important point, that some amount of stress in both our life and work is good for us, providing it isn't ongoing. That's when you get chronic stress, which can lead to burnout and other health issues that you really, really want to avoid. Having a stressful day here and there is healthy, it's normal, It can help us push past our comfort zones as well. And so, for example, if you're scheduled to do a presentation that you're losing sleep over because you're so stressed, okay, and then you do the presentation and you succeeded in the thing that you really didn't want to do, that's actually really healthy. It allows us to do things that we haven't done before and become more confident. And stress is a sign that we care in those kind of aspects. But I'm not talking about that kind of stress today. I'm going to be speaking about the more ongoing negative types of stress that you may or may not be feeling in the job or daily work that you do. So, today we will chat about how to tell if your job is the thing that's stressing you out, and then identifying why it is stressing you out, because that's very important, okay? Because how do we help that if we don't know why exactly we are stressed in the first place? And then I will chat through whether you need to perhaps change your job, like change who you work for, maybe change role and have a change of career completely. And then we'll look at what to look for if you are thinking of having a change of career, because there are so many options out there, and a lot of the time we don't even know what's out there for us. And it's important to find something that is maybe more aligned with your life so that you can become that less stressed person that you want to be. So, first things first, you're stressed out. Maybe with a lot of things on your plate, but if your job is one of the things that's causing you stress, or is just adding to the stress, or you're just not really sure it could be, well, it would be good to try and work out the cause so that it can be addressed. Okay, so some signs that you may be experiencing stress from your work, from your job, could be that some physical signs that you've noticed, like headaches, tiredness, and fatigue. Maybe feeling anxious when you log on or when you step into the office or the workplace, or if you're leaving to go to work. So you could notice these few things, and perhaps you haven't correlated them to being related to work. Things like that could be like muscle tension and digestive issues. These are more subtle signs that you're not happy with what's going on. Your body, your mind, and your body are connected. Okay, so these subtle signs, although you may not have noticed, but you may need to take note and think, well, when are they occurring? Are they not occurring at the weekend or on days off? And just take note, because if it is something that you're experiencing just either during working hours or after work, but not when you've got like a week off or at the weekend, then maybe that's related. Some other signs could be more emotional. So, do you feel a little bit more sensitive during your work hours? Are you having like feelings of overwhelm and irritability? Maybe you're feeling some sadness or feeling really unmotivated. These could all point to signs of work stress. And that's not to say here or there you might experience these feelings, during, peaks and troughs of high workload, for example. But if this is something you're noticing as a regular occurrence, you might want to look at addressing it. Now, I just mentioned workload. And this could actually be a sign that points to work stress. And again, a day here or there where it's really busy, perhaps you're having more complex days, dealing with more complex or difficult situations, and that can be expected. It's when it becomes constant. Obviously in most jobs we expect peaks and troughs, but if it's happening regularly and that's then impacting you so that you are feeling overwhelmed by the sheer amount of work, maybe it's becoming unmanageable and you're really struggling to meet deadlines. These are all indicators that your job is becoming stressful. So, things you might not have considered as well are things like the environment of work. So, things like a toxic workplace, toxic work culture, maybe you're exposed to conflicts on a daily basis or conflicts with a colleague, superiors, maybe feeling generally unsupported. All of these things can contribute to stress. Another thing is a lack of control. This can indicate work-related stress. So this can be relevant as well to the increased workloads, because if that's not something you can control either, but it could also be relative to what project you're working on, if you're not allowed to choose what you work on or how to do your work, and you feel like you're being micromanaged, giving you basically that horrible sense of powerlessness. That can lead to job stress and dissatisfaction. Okay, something as well that I will talk about in a bit more detail later, but this is your values. So, if you're in a job where there is actually value misalignment, this can put stress on you. So, if you're spending that much of your life and your time at a place and it's really going against your values or you don't have an interest in it, this can actually have a real negative effect and basically increase your stress levels. This could be feeling like maybe that your role is meaningless or that it's not in line with your personal goals. It could even be down to believing what you do or where you work goes against your values or your morals. So an example I can think of for this to make it a bit clearer, a friend of mine was looking for a new job a while ago and she applied for a really great role and it all sounded amazing. The benefits sounded really great, but she didn't end up taking that job in the end. And the reason why is that it was with a gambling company and she personally felt that that company wouldn't align with her values and morals, and her beliefs about gambling, and probably some people she knew who have been negatively impacted by gambling. And so it just didn't sit right with her. If she'd taken the job purely for the money and the benefits, she probably would have found down the road that she would be experiencing some form of dissatisfaction and then probably would have found something else and had to look for something else. So that's just one example of values not aligning. Okay, there are lots and lots of ways to identify work stress, but I'll just go over one last one today. And it's more a feeling of being stagnant or stuck, kind of like in a dead-end job kind of vibe. If you're feeling like there is no way to grow or move forward or advance in your career where you are, that's going to add some level of stress, albeit different stress, on the place that you have to turn up to every single day. It's going to kind of drain you. It's going to be a stressful, draining feeling. And that could also be perhaps if you've been in the same role for an extended period of time and you've not had the opportunity to progress. This would lead to feelings of low morale, low motivation. I think these are the things that would be most noticeable in that kind of situation. So there you go. There were 7 signs there. And if you're thinking, yep, some of those sound like me, that sounds just the description of how I'm feeling right now, then you probably have a good idea why you're feeling that stress. So, workload, or because you've been there for 4 years and everyone else has moved up and you've not been promoted, or, you now think, yes, the environment is toxic. Perhaps that's why I feel really down and stressed in my role. And look, if you still quite can't put your finger on why you're not feeling it, but it's stress because of your job, then I've got a few questions to ask you that hopefully will help you understand why that is, because it's really important that if you're not feeling satisfaction with your job, that you know why. Because if you come to the point where you decide you need to be looking elsewhere, either for a new role, so a new job, at a different company, maybe same role, different company, or a complete change of career, then you really want to understand what you don't want in your next step. Okay? And we want to make sure the next one ticks all of your boxes so that you can be much happier and way less stressed at your next place. So, we want to make sure that the Sunday scaries, I believe it's called, want to vanish the Sunday scaries and want Mondays not to be so daunting. It's horrible when you're on a Sunday night counting down the hours to Monday morning because you really just don't want to get up and go. Okay, work should never feel like that. So, let's think. What don't you like about your current job? Could it be the nature of the work itself? So the question is, have a think about whether you'd be happy doing the same role that you're doing now, but perhaps with more guidance, or perhaps less guidance if you're finding out that maybe you're being micromanaged. Maybe if there was less pressure or more of a varying workload, would you feel more satisfaction then? If not, then are you someone who might be happier in a role where you can walk around and talk to people? Maybe currently you're at a desk job and you work alone the majority of the time. Think about the details of what you're doing currently. And is it that is stressing you, or is it something else? So take some time and you can pause this episode if you need to, or you can write them down and go back to it later. But are these things that if they change, would that make you happier? If you're happy with the role itself and the nature of the role itself, then let's move to the next question. Could it perhaps be the work culture? So, if your role was in another company where the people were perhaps more friendly, maybe the culture is more relaxed, not as strict, perhaps the opposite, perhaps you're seeking more of a professional kind of vibe, all depends where you are now, would that lead to more contentment? Perhaps you're working from home, or maybe you run your own business and you're feeling a bit isolated, lacking connection with others throughout the day. Do you think that if you had, a bigger network and you had connections with others, perhaps other people in the same line of work, would that make a difference on your day and make you happier? Would that help you release stress throughout the day if you could have more social interactions, even coffee catch-ups, even Zoom coffee catch-ups? Is that something that would impact your happiness levels and your contentment with work? Okay, so this is all about culture. And that's the second question or questions to ask yourself. Now, I could be wrong, but I feel like this next one could be, I say the most popular, but really probably the most unpopular kind of question here. And it's based on work-life balance. So are you working longer hours than you should be to get the job done? Are you being asked to work overtime frequently? I would actually include being like too stressed and tired to go about your real life as part of this. So again, if your workload is too high during work hours and it's causing you to feel drained, so much so that you don't have the energy to go out and socialize after work at the end of the day. You know, you want to, but you're just feeling drained. I feel like this would come into work balance too. So just have a think. Do you feel that your current role, your current job is impacting your work-life balance? And if this was something that didn't exist, would you actually be quite satisfied with what you're doing? Would you be happy in that role or at that company? Now, the next thing you could ask yourself is whether there is a mismatch between your skills and the job you're required to do. Because it is possible that perhaps there is that feeling of overwhelm due to doing something without the necessary support or training. And this is something that can be fixed by, or possibly be fixed by asking a superior if it is possible to have some additional training or some support until you're able to get up to speed. Or is it really not that much of an easy fix? And actually, you need to find something more suitable. Maybe you're really not feeling qualified to do the job. And look, that can lead to feelings of overwhelm, anxiety, and dread that I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast. I think once you understand the root cause or causes, if it's a combination of things, you can decide whether it or they can be fixed or whether you'd be better off looking elsewhere. And rather than going for the default of looking for the exact same job, exact same role elsewhere, which may then put you in that same unsatisfied, unnecessary stress position that you may be feeling now, you want to think about whether you need a change in order to become that happier, more content person in your work life, and make sure that you're finding something that best aligns with you. I think, probably from my personal experience, let's be honest, I think we're so young when we're asked to decide what we want to do as a career. Like, what are we, 16? I'm sure I was like 16, 17, thinking, what do I want to do as a career? And then you have to make a choice, especially if you want to go to uni. Like, that is a choice in itself. Do you want to go or not? And then when you get to uni, you're racking up a whole heap of debt. So you're like, wow, this is going to cost a fortune. It better be the choice. It's a serious thing, right? It's so daunting. And then, so you make this decision, it takes 3 or 4 years of your life. Then you have your parents expectations, high expectations of this great career that you've studied for, and you're planning this exciting career path. And life does not end up that way. I'm sorry. I understand it sounds like a fairy tale, and everybody wants the best for their children and their family and friends. But life does not work out like a fairy tale, not for everyone. And so for me, I studied law at university. And I'll be completely honest, it was a little dull at times, but I did thoroughly enjoy it. And if I went back to university and I had to do it all over again, I would probably still choose it. If not, I'd choose business, but I've heard also that was pretty boring. Sorry if anyone is studying business at the moment. But I really, really don't regret choosing law. Did I become a lawyer? Much to my parents' disappointment, no. It didn't align where I was in my life. So from my research of looking at jobs after I got my degree, it was going to be a lot of work, a lot of hours, not very much pay. And all I wanted to do at that point in time was save up, work as little as possible so I could go out and enjoy my 20s and then travel and ultimately move to Australia, which I did. And don't get me wrong, I learnt a lot in my degree, so much that I can apply to everyday life. You know, general knowledge, there's so much that law applies to. Obviously, there's criminal law, but you've got estate law, contract law, business, negligence, civil law, for relationships, you know, there was land law, forensics, there was just so much, and I learned so much. I don't regret it at all. Anyway, enough about me. My point here is that just because you decided to do something, however many years ago, 10 years ago, 2 years ago, 6 months ago, just because you decided to do something, just because some people do one thing their whole entire life, doesn't mean you need to feel the same. It doesn't mean you need to feel stuck in doing something that no longer aligns with you or your interests or the stage of life that you're in now. I personally think some people get more bored than others doing whatever, just in general, like hobbies and work. I feel like I'm probably one of those people. And some people need more change, more variety. And then there are other people that thrive doing what they know day in, day out, and building on that, having that stability and growth in the same industry. And what my opinion is that there is no right and there is no wrong, apart from doing something that brings you as much happiness, as much joy, and as little stress as possible. I also believe there is no waste of time. If you did one thing for a few years and changed to something else after that, that's not a waste. I started a job once. I think I was there for, at a stretch, 3 months. And I didn't enjoy it. Obviously, that's why I was only there 3 months. But do I think it was a waste of time? Absolutely not, because the job I got after that, I couldn't have got without that job I was at for 3 months. So that role was absolutely pivotal in me getting my next step up in my career. I think every role and every bit of exposure that you are able to get gives you and builds out this background that no one can take away from you. And that's what makes you you. And that background you have in something means that you can translate that usually into something else. Even just having background knowledge in something in one industry can actually serve you to have that knowledge that you'll use personally, not even necessarily professionally. And so I think being afraid to change and start again, get a new career, do something new, I think just putting up with that dissatisfaction day in, day out, that stress on your mind, on your body, it's so not worth it. You can improve your life in such a big way. And like I say, this is the thing. You do this for a third of your life. Do you want to be unhappy and stressed for a third of your life? Or do you want to boost your life? Like, a third of your life spent being happy is a lot. It's huge. And you deserve not to feel the strain of doing something you hate every day. So, after listening to this episode, if you're feeling the motivation now for something better, then I have a few more things to get your juices flowing to identify the right path for you. And that is, firstly, having a purpose leads to great satisfaction in a job. And I've read a book called Ikigai. You may have heard of it. I mentioned this in episode 16 of the podcast about my top 3 books that I've read. So go back and listen to that one if you want to know more. It's basically a book about finding your Ikigai, and that's like the satisfaction and combination of finding something where you feel purpose, you're good at something, and you can make money from it. So I'll put the link in the show notes if you fancy purchasing this book to have a little read further. Identifying a career or a role where you really feel like you have a purpose. And by that, it could be as much as just feeling that you're needed and as an essential part of a team perhaps, or essential cog in a company could increase this feeling. It could be something like a change of company could give you, or it could just be a change of mindset in your current role. But that is something that can help you get onto the right path here. I think doing your research as well will also help you to see what other roles are out there and see if there is anything that's more in alignment with where you are in life. And that could be not necessarily a change of role, but maybe you're looking for more of a part-time role, or being in a more flexible company where you have more freedom over your hours. And look, if you don't look, you're going to miss what's out there. I think just assuming that what you're doing now is all there is a huge mistake. And you should be looking at what you want, what you need, and then go look for it. Be open and put your needs first. And you might not be able to find it, but you might find something close. And that's better than nothing. Now, if you're making a career change, you probably want to have a look to see what skills or qualifications you might need. That's a really great starting point. You don't want to get your heart set on something and then be really surprised that you might need to invest in further education or training. So yeah, definitely do your research there, because then you'll be able to see if you have the time, the money to invest, and you've got the whole full picture view. If you have absolutely no idea what you want to do next, but you know it's exactly not what you're doing now, then perhaps you want to think about getting some more professional help and advice. And again, another great first step, I would suggest either get a coach who can help identify the skills you've got, but also your interests, and that will help you find more of an ideal role that will suit you. Another thing you can do is speak to a career counsellor or therapist for issues you have, if you're really struggling to cope with where you are now and you've really tried to get support internally, but you're really struggling with that, I highly recommend seeking support. Like, that's just the way to go. Rule number one, okay, don't have to do this alone. And then I've just got some other quick tips I can recommend. So great to do some trials if you can, or volunteering in some careers that you think could be right for you. And that's just a really good way to test the waters first. And you can do this via networking. If you can reach out to professionals who are already in that field that you're looking at, you can ask them for tips, you can ask them for advice. You can even ask them, like, what are your 3 top things that you love about this role? And what are your 3 biggest challenges? Because I think nobody ever knows what a role totally entails. Nobody can get the full effect until you're in that role. And even if you are in a role at one company and you move to another company, it can be so different. I think you just honestly, you think you know what you're getting into, and then it can be so different at times. So I think this is a very valuable tip. Everyone has rose-tinted glasses, don't they, when they're on the other side of the interview table? Like, I want this job, give me the job. And, you can always ask the interviewers these questions as well. But I would definitely think about maybe reaching out to someone on LinkedIn and using that networking so you're getting some non-biased answers. Maybe at a different company from that you're applying from, but, it's up to you. So some final thoughts before I leave you today is your job does not have to be your identity. I get for some people, they might like it to be part of their identity, but it's not something you have to put up with. You can change at any time, and you can change throughout different stages and different phases of your life. We change as people throughout our lives. So a job that might have worked for us, excuse the pun, sorry, a job that may have worked for us when we were 25, single, childless, with hardly any responsibilities, it might not work as well at 40 when there are different needs and interests, perhaps wanting to be home with your kids more. Maybe you're not interested in climbing the career ladder anymore. We really all are different, which brings me to another thing. Very, very, very important point here. Comparison is the thief of joy. I'll say it again. Comparison is the thief of joy. I think knowing what makes you and only you happy, and being in a role where you are satisfied and your needs are met, that is success. Comparing your job to someone else's, comparing your salary to theirs, these are not measures of success. To me, happiness is a sign of success. Someone on a salary, I don't know, let's pick a number out the sky, $500,000. $500,000 a year. Always on call, having to work at the weekends. If they are miserable, this is not success. If they thrive in what they do, maybe they love being busy, they love that feeling of purpose that they have in their role, and they want to be involved during the weekends, and it gives them that dopamine, it suits their lifestyle. That is success for them. If someone is on $50,000 a year salary, and they thrive on the freedom they get and satisfaction in their role, maybe interactions with people, and that suits their needs to make ends meet. This is success. However, if they are seeking more money, more progression, more responsibility, more of anything, then this is also not success for them. Each coin has two faces, okay? And success is defined by the person, not the role. And that's what I truly believe. And I think this can be a really, really hard one to conquer because of what society tells us. And so therefore comparison can, be in our minds, and things are really not that black and white in everything, not just jobs. And so I think comparison is actually a huge, huge topic. And if you're interested, I would love to do an episode just on comparison and how this can affect our life, our stress levels, our satisfaction, and how we can try to overcome this. So please let me know if you'll be interested, and I will get on it. Right, well, I hope I've inspired you to be happy in your job, and if you're not, to take some action to understand more deeply why you're not satisfied and how this could be causing you stress, and hopefully make a positive change so that you can spend a third of your life being less stressed. Come on, we all want this. But until next week, I will catch you all then. I hope you enjoyed listening. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram, Stress Less Obsessed. And thanks for listening. Until next time, breathe and stress less.